Welcome to the WalterFootball.com podcast. This is episode 333. We're doing the 2021 NFL AFC West and NFC West season previews. Joined once again by Jacob Kamiker from the Sporting News. Jacob, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm having a good day. I was just trying to figure out how to mail a package that I've already mailed. So, learning how to use the postal service is not always fun, but what is fun is talking about two of the best divisions in football and two divisions that, could combine for like possibly 7 double-digit win teams. There's only one team I think we would both agree with that doesn't really have a shot at double-digit wins in this division. So I'm looking forward to talking about these two Western-based divisions.
Yeah, I think they're the two best divisions in football, so I'm excited to talk about them. And if we're wrong about the one team, which I think we're going to agree which team that is, with the new playoff rules, all of these teams could conceivably make the playoffs, which is kind of insane. So I'm excited to talk about it. First, please hit subscribe, hit the like button, notification bell, comment below, share this video. All that would help us. We're closing in on 2,500 followers on YouTube, which is kind of cool for a new channel like ours. So I'm excited about that. And, the season's right around the corner. So we're going to have a ton of fantasy content and then picks content during the season. So definitely, share this video and subscribe if you can. That'd be great. I guess we're going to start in the AFC. The team that lost the Super Bowl, the Chiefs. They're the favorites to win the AFC West, as they should be. So do you think that they're going, how far do you think the Chiefs are going to go? Do you think they're going to win the Super Bowl, or do you think they're going to come a bit shy of doing so?
I think they're going to be in the Super Bowl again. I think they very well could win it. I mean, this is just a great team. It's one with few weaknesses, and we saw what their biggest weakness was last year in the Super Bowl. Their offensive line was in shambles. Eric Fisher and Mitchell Schwartz were out at that point, and they had nothing at tackle. And the interior of their line was only really okay. But they've spent the entire offseason basically remaking their offensive line. They traded for Orlando Brown. They signed Joe Thuney. They signed Austin Blythe. They convinced Kyle Long to come out of retirement. They drafted Creed Humphrey. They drafted Trey Smith. They've just added a ton to their unit. They also have Laurent Duvernay-Tardif, who missed last season while working in the hospitals in Canada, and he might come back as well. So you're talking about having a very strong offensive line and a lot of depth. And, I know we always say continuity is a good thing on the offensive line, and that's very true. They'll only have one returning starter in Mike Remmers, who took over for Mitchell Schwartz last year. And, he's been a solid right tackle during his career. He's had some up and down performances, but just the amount of depth they have on that offensive line is going to really help that offense, because we know Patrick Mahomes is going to be good. We don't know how their running game is going to do, but Andy Reid always makes do with what he has. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire was a rookie last year and a former first-round pick. So I think they're going to be great on offense. And defense, they don't have a ton of big-name guys, but they have enough. They have the Chris Jones. They have Tyrann Mathieu. And they have a lot of guys that aren't as big names, but they produce well. Their secondary was very, very good last year. L'Jarius Sneed was great as a rookie. Travarius Ward's proven to be very good. So they're just a well-rounded team, and they can just beat you with their offense. Even if their defense isn't good, their offense can Patrick Mahomes can drop 40 to 50 points in a game if he has to. So I really like their outlook this year, but the big key for me is that improved offensive line, because we see it every year. Teams with the best offensive lines go the furthest. And the Chiefs, if all these new additions pan out and gain chemistry, they're going to be in really good shape up front.
Yeah, their offensive line was a disaster in the Super Bowl last year, especially once they lost Eric Fisher in the AFC Championship. It just fell apart, and Patrick Mahomes was running for his life, and it was unusual to see him struggle so much, even though he played well, considering the circumstances. But Mahomes is usually dominant, especially in big games, and he wasn't so in the Super Bowl. And I think that's going to be something that really motivates him. The last time everyone saw him was him struggling on the national stage. And Mahomes always has a big chip on his shoulder. He was even motivated to battle the Jets last year because they passed on him in the draft. So, he's going to be hyped up to go into the season. And the offensive line is so much better. And I like what you said about the Chiefs. The continuity is the key for the offensive line, and the Chiefs don't have continuity, but they have a ton of talented blockers. And I think this is something where, as the season progresses, their offensive line could play better and better. And, they might struggle a bit early on, but Mahomes and Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce and all those guys, they can carry the offense because we saw them do that last year. Despite having a bad offensive line, they still went to the Super Bowl. I think the Chiefs should be the favorite to win the Super Bowl this year. And maybe you can argue the Buccaneers. I think they're one of the two best teams in the NFL for sure. And I agree, their defense is pretty good. I mean, I think people recognize the Chiefs as, this high flying offense that has to outscore teams because their defense is bad. But in the past 2 years, they've been 7th and 10th in points allowed. And I know that's not the greatest barometer, but still, it just shows that they're not a bad defense. They're at least above average, if not good. So unless they have a ton of injuries like they did last year on the offensive line, I think there's a good chance to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's funny because if you look at their defense on paper, their starters and their depth, you're like, this only looks okay. You could have envisioned it being below average, but Steve Spagnuolo has just done a really great job getting them all to play together, and they have impact players at every level of the defense because Chris Jones is there. They also signed Jaron Reed away from the Seahawks after the Seahawks cut him during a contract dispute. So they have a couple good guys up front and Frank Clark. And then, secondary, they have a lot of just underdog type guys that have done well. And then Tyrann Mathieu brings it all together. So, they get by, and now we'll see what they can do with the two speedy linebackers they've drafted, Willie Gay and Nick Bolton the last 2 years. So if those guys pan out, this defense could look a lot better. Like you said, I think I agree it's in the above average to good camp. But if they can just get into that solid, good to even a little bit better than good, then you're talking about a really well-rounded and good team.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, linebacker has been an issue for them. So if some of the young linebackers step up, their defense is going to be even better. So if there's a team in the AFC West that can challenge them, I think it's one of two teams. For me, it's the Broncos and the Chargers. First of all, do you agree? And second of all, which of those teams do you think could beat the Chiefs if the Chiefs have a ton of injuries?
So I definitely agree. Those are the two teams that could challenge. I think this is a double-edged sort of a question because if the Broncos trade for Aaron Rodgers, then it would be the Broncos for sure because their roster outside of the quarterback position is very, very strong. And if they don't trade for Rodgers, then I would lean more on the Chargers just because they have Justin Herbert, who was great as a rookie. They have a new coach in Brandon Staley, who will hopefully win more close games than Anthony Lynn was able to. And I think he'll do a lot with that defense. So, I think both of these teams have a lot of upside. But if I had to pick one today, the Broncos are the ones that are the boom or bust because of the Rodgers factor. And then the Chargers are kind of more of the, this is a safe team on the rise. They're probably not going to fall off unless something crazy happens.
Yeah, so I agree. I mean, if Rodgers goes to the Broncos, I think they're one of the best teams in the NFL for sure. I mean, they already had one of the top defenses in the league. Granted, it wasn't as good as it usually is last year because Von Miller was out, but Miller's going to be back. You're going to have Rodgers there, talented receiving core. You have Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Noah Fant, a solid offensive line, and they drafted Javonte Williams, so the running game is going to be better. The only thing they're missing is a quarterback, and if they get Rodgers, I think they're automatically a top 3 NFL team along with the Chiefs and the Buccaneers. And having that in the division with 2 divisional games against the Chiefs this season is going to be awesome, and I imagine that they're going to play again in the playoffs. So I'm hoping it happens. Peyton Manning today said that Rodgers is not going to. He thinks that Rodgers is not going to Denver. He didn't say for sure. So does that change your optimism on the Broncos? Because I know you bet the Broncos 50-1. I bet them at either 25 or 30-1. So what are your thoughts on that? And each passing day at where Rodgers isn't traded?
Yeah, as the season gets closer and Rodgers remains in Green Bay, there's less optimism for sure around the Broncos if that happens. I'm still happy to have them at 50-1 because, you're just banking on either Drew Lock makes the leap and is this really great quarterback in his third year and puts it all together. And he has the talent to possibly do that. Or, the less likely scenario of the bunch would be Teddy Bridgewater wins the starting job and just doesn't make any mistakes at all. throughout the whole season. And it's just like, wow, this Broncos team is super efficient. So, I'd lean more on the Drew Lock element of him making that next step and, Vic Fangio finally getting some good injury luck. But I think they can still make the playoffs even without Rodgers, but they're not going to I don't think they'd make a Super Bowl run with Drew Lock as the starter, unless he made like some astronomical leap that no one is expecting. He wasn't that great last year, Drew Lock, but I still feel like there's more upside there. And he was good during his rookie year in limited action. So I'm interested to see what he can do. He's been getting votes of confidence. Von Miller gave him a vote of confidence at the celebrity softball game for the MLB All-Star weekend. So, that may just be a teammate trying to pump up his quarterback, but it's at least something to keep an eye on in the preseason.
Yeah, well, I mean, what are you gonna say? Like, oh, our quarterback sucks. We had the chance this year. I mean, of course, Von Miller was gonna say that, and I could see Drew Lock improving. That could definitely happen. If not, Teddy Bridgewater. Hopefully, he plays like he did in weeks 1 through 16 and not 17 last year. But yeah, I mean, Lock has been so inconsistent. There have been I've been rewatching the 2020 season. I'm up to week 14. There are some games where he's actually pretty good. And then other games where he's just a complete disaster. And if he can get more consistent and improve, I think the Broncos could reach the playoffs because of their defense and the weapons they have offensively. If Locke is the same as last year, or if Bridgewater has to start and he's inconsistent, then the Broncos might just miss out on the playoffs. Maybe they go like 8-9, 9-8. I think either way, I don't see this team finishing 7-10 or worse. I think if Rodgers is not there, I think they're probably an 8 or 9 win team. If Rodgers is there, I think they win 13 or 14 games. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think so. I think I have a few, I have that 12 wins with Rodgers, but that was like very hastily done. Like, just let's get through these games and see what it turns out to be. And also I'm, doing that kind of blindly, being like, oh, they might have Rodgers. And then half the time I'm like, okay, they have too many wins if they don't have Rodgers. So yeah, I think 13-14 would be their likely total if Rodgers goes there. And I agree. I think the worst case scenario is 7-10. And I still think I maintain this. I think Vic Fangio doesn't get enough credit for the job he's done as a head coach. Like, he has just endured terrible luck and horrible quarterbacking scenarios, but this is a well-built team and the defense has always played pretty well. So I just hope things pan out for him this year, because I think he doesn't get enough credit, and he's a great defensive mind. So we'll see what happens there. But I definitely like the Broncos. It's just the boom or bust factor of Rodgers, and every passing day, like you said, it comes more and more like, man, are we going to see this happen? We don't know.
Yeah, they're 22-1 right now on Bookmaker. Maybe they're better somewhere else. Like, maybe you can find 25-1. You probably could. I would bet that because, the upside is just enormous, because if Rodgers ends up going to Denver, that number is going to be 7-1, if not like 6-1. So, I bet them, like I said, it's either 25 or 30-1. You were smart enough to bet them at 50-1 as soon as that news happened on draft day. So I like your position. I like my position a little bit less, but I'm still in favor of that. That's one of the main Super Bowl props I would bet. And the Rodgers thing is kind of keeping me off the Chargers, because if Rodgers goes to Denver, like, the Chargers are going to have to compete with Mahomes and Rodgers and play them twice this year, and that's going to be problematic for them. But if Rodgers doesn't go to Denver, I like the Chargers a lot more. And you mentioned them as the team that could contend with the Chiefs if the Chiefs falter a little bit and Rodgers doesn't go there. How far do you think the Chargers can go in the playoffs this year if they make it?
I think that it would depend on who they draw in the first round. Like, if they draw a team like the Colts, I think that they could, go to the second round, then maybe be kind of like the Browns were last year when they fought the Chiefs really hard and almost were able to advance to the AFC Championship game. So I think the Chargers could get that far. I think if they run into the Chiefs in the playoffs, they're going to have some problems. Like, they'll be able to score with them, but I think just the experience factor for Mahomes and Andy Reid would just outweigh that of Herbert and Brandon Staley. But like, if you look at this team, it's really solid. Like, they don't have this is another team that they don't have a lot of holes. You're going to say that a lot about the West divisions in both the NFC and AFC. Offensively, the Chargers have added to their offensive line. They've drafted Rashawn Slater, signed Corey Linsley, and added Matt Filer. So those are 3 big additions to help, block up front for Herbert, who was good with a mediocre offensive line last year. So that's impressive. And then the defense has some good personnel up front. They've invested a lot of draft capital the last 3 years up there, but they never were really able to get the most of it because they had some health concerns and just their defense just wasn't great under Gus Bradley, I believe. But Brandon Staley should help transform it into a really good unit. We saw what he did with the Rams. Like, we all thought it was going to be a downgrade from Wade Phillips, and Staley turned out to be just fine. So I have a lot of faith in Brandon Staley. I think he's going to end up being a good coach. It's obviously hard to pin a lot on a first-time head coach, but he could potentially have a Kevin Stefanski type factor like what the Browns had last year. I guess the more I talk about this, the more I feel like the Chargers are this year's version of the Browns, or they have that type of potential. And it's just a matter of what Staley can do and if Herbert can progress.
I like the comparison with the Browns because the Chargers spent so much energy on their offensive line, which is what the Browns did last year. There was so much hype with the Browns heading into 2019. I think they were like 8-1 to win the Super Bowl. And their offensive line had like Greg Robinson at left tackle. It was just a disaster in most places. And I was like, I remember talking to people and they're like, oh, are you going to bet the Browns? Because I think everyone was doing it. And I'm like, no, I think this team is mediocre at best. They can't block at all. And I like them a lot more heading into last year because of the improvements they made to their blocking. And that's what the Chargers did. I mean, you mentioned Matt Filer and Corey Linsley and Rashawn Slater. Adding those guys is going to really improve things for Justin Herbert, who was really impressive last year, considering that when the Chargers offensive line was healthy last year, they were like mediocre. But remember, like Brian Bulaga was out for several games. Trey Turner was out for like half, or at least more than half the year. And so they had injury issues up front, and Herbert still played way above expectations. And now he's going to have experience. So I like him a lot. The only concern I have is Staley. Like, I like him, but this is a weird offseason. Again, not as bad as last year, but it's still a weird offseason where there might be some like a steeper learning curve for him. And so the Chargers might start slowly because they have a new head coach. I still think he's an upgrade over what they had last year. Actually, he's just watching the Chargers game in week 14 last year against the Falcons. And like the week before, they had that screw up at the goal line as the clock was ticking down, and then it happened again, like right before halftime, where half the team ran on the field for a field goal, and the offensive players stayed on, and they couldn't get the 3 points, and they ended up winning that game. But they were so discombobulated so many times in that instance where, like, I feel like Staley, like by default, is going to be better in that area. So I like the Chargers. I have them going 12-5, and I have them losing in the first round. I imagine they're going to lose in the first or second round just because the AFC is so tough. But I like them. I like them overall, and I think that they have a bright future ahead of them.
Yeah, I have them listed at 11-6, but I would probably bump them up to 12 wins if the Broncos don't get Aaron Rodgers. Like, that makes the projection weird because like Broncos probably are going to beat the Chargers maybe twice if they have Aaron Rodgers. So but I like the 11 or 12 wins for the Chargers. I think that they're going to be a very good team this year.
Yeah, I'll say this, though. I mean, Justin Herbert played against Mahomes once last year because the second meeting was in week 17, and that game went to overtime. So, yep. I think this Chargers team could beat anyone. I mean, they're really good. I just think the inexperience might hurt them. So we're both down on the Raiders, as we indicated. I imagine we'll agree. But why do you think the Raiders are going to finish last in the AFC West?
Well, they demolished their offensive line for no good reason, really. They, decided to take it apart. They got rid of Gabe Jackson, Rodney Hudson, and Trent Brown. And, you can justify getting rid of Trent Brown, maybe saying like he didn't pan out, he couldn't stay healthy. But I don't understand why they took apart the entirety of it, because they're only bringing back Colton Miller and Richie Incognito, who they released and brought back. So they were just going to go with a whole new unit. And I know the Chiefs are doing the same thing, but the difference is the Chiefs unit was only, when it was healthy, it was only like average to, I would say, slightly below average. But maybe you could argue them being slightly above average, but I never truly loved what I saw. But the Raiders actually had a great offensive line when everyone was healthy. So now they're just moving on from, two all-pro types. Trent Brown's been a really good player before. Rodney Hudson has been too, and Gabe Jackson's been a solid starter. And you're relying on Denzel James, Nick Martin, Denzel Good, and then you got Alex Leatherwood in the draft, which everyone was really upset about, except us, because we correctly projected that, and everyone else was like, "Oh, he was going to go like 60," and it was like, "No, he wasn't. What are you talking about?" But so I like Leatherwood, don't get me wrong, but there's like two holes on the interior line. And Derek Carr is not a guy who's going to do well under pressure. He's not super mobile. So I don't understand what they were doing. And they spent money on Kenyon Drake too. Josh Jacobs wasn't super impressive last year, but now you're just making matters worse because now he doesn't have his good blocking in front of him. And now he has Kenyon Drake taking touches from him. And Kenyon Drake wasn't anything great between the tackles last year either. He was maybe solid at best. So I think this offense is going to be significantly downgraded, and the defense has been a problem for a while for Oakland. And I think they've made some upgrades there, signing Yannick Ngakoue and drafting Trevon Merrick, but I don't think they have enough talent at corner. And I still don't think that the linebacker core has come together yet. They have good players there, but they've just never played together. They brought Gus Bradley in to try to fix that, but he never really brought the Chargers defense to the next level. So I'm wondering what happens there. But yeah, there's just not a lot to like about the Raiders. I think they'll win some games, but they're so clearly a rung below all the other teams in this division that, it wouldn't surprise me to see them go 1-5 or even lose all their divisional games. And that's going to make it hard for them to make any sort of noise in the AFC.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you said. The destruction of the offensive line is so bad. I think it's the primary reason why they've been competitive over the past couple years, as opposed to what they were before John Gruden. And I would say probably a second reason why they've been competitive is because of Gruden plus Greg Olsen. I think they've managed the offense very well. Like, Gruden gets a lot of flack, but he and Greg Olsen have done a great job with their offense. It's been the defense that's been a big problem, and I still think that's an issue. Although Ngakoue will help a lot. If Casey Hayward can return to what he was before 2020, that'll be nice too. We'll see what they have in Merrick. And they signed Quentin Jefferson. Maybe he can bounce back after off a down year. So they have some players where they can improve defensively. I still think their defense is probably below average at best. But it may not be as bad as it has been, but their offense has carried them, and that's not going to be the case anymore. I like the John Brown signing, but their offensive line is just going to be so bad this year. Unless some of the guys they have to replace the guys who left, unless they're going to be a big surprise, I doubt the Raiders are going to be very competitive in that division, like one of the best divisions in football. So I have them going, I believe, 4-13. I got yelled at by some Raider fans, but I think I'm correct. I had them going 8-8 last year, which is what they finished, and I would be surprised if they have a winning record this year.
I have them going 3-14. So if they're yelling at you, they must hate me right now. But yeah, I agree. I think they have some guys with upside on the offensive line. I know they drafted John Simpson in the 4th round in 2020, and they drafted Jimmy Morrison in the 7th at center out of Pittsburgh, who kind of projects well the next level, but it still just doesn't look good. Like, they have a lot of unproven guys or career backups fighting for starting jobs. So as much as I think John Gruden and Greg Olsen have done a solid job, I don't think that this is not their year. It's definitely not their year.
Yeah, agreed. So divisional odds to obviously win the AFC West: Broncos at plus 575, Chiefs at minus 325, the Raiders at plus 1800. So the odds makers agree with us, and the Chargers are at plus 525. Does anything stand out to you as being a good bet?
Yeah, I'd honestly consider betting both the Broncos and the Chargers, because what happens, like, if the Broncos trade for Aaron Rodgers, they're going to be in the divisional race for sure. If the Chiefs deal with any sort of injury issue, or Patrick Mahomes, God forbid, gets banged up and has to miss a few games, like, these teams could hypothetically catch the Chiefs. So if we're talking over 5-1 odds, I like the idea of just laying a small bet on both of them. And then, maybe they catch the Chiefs naturally. Maybe they don't, but it's worth a shot, I think. I wouldn't bet on the Chiefs, obviously. I think that number's too low. If they were in a worse division, I would consider it. But I think I would consider betting on both the Chargers and the Broncos because one of them could challenge the Chiefs. And, as we see every year, injuries happen in the NFL, and you never root for them, but they have a big impact on divisional races. Like the year that Peyton Manning got hurt for the Colts, like, no one thought that they were going to be like the worst team in the NFL. So
that's true. I think Broncos seem more appealing to me at plus 575. Like all it takes is Rodgers to go there, and that number goes to like plus 120. So you're getting good value. The Chargers at plus 525 basically says, will Patrick Mahomes get hurt and will Aaron Rodgers not go to Denver? If you think that's, two things that are going to happen, plus 525 for the Chargers is okay. So I would bet the Broncos and then the Chargers. Chiefs at minus 325. I feel like you should just bet them to win the Super Bowl at this point, rather than that number. And the Chiefs right now, I'm looking at Bookmaker. The Chiefs are plus 460. I think you could probably find like plus 550 somewhere. The Raiders are at plus 7,000, so 70 to 1. The Broncos right now are 22 to 1, and the Chargers are 23.5 to 1. Obviously, you bet the Broncos at 50 to 1. Would you still bet them at 22 to 1?
Yeah, I would definitely consider it because like we've been saying, if Aaron Rodgers goes there, those numbers are going to drop into the single digits. So you're getting good value either way. And, the Broncos probably don't win a Super Bowl as currently constructed. But again, you never know. Maybe Drew Lock takes that next step. Like it's worth at least betting on it for the Aaron Rodgers potential. And then you could still root for them and see like, hey, how far can they take this? So I would definitely do it. And as far as the Chiefs go, I would agree. I would bet them to win the Super Bowl if you're interested in betting them to win the division. There may also be some prop bets out there where you could be like, bet them to make the AFC Championship game if you're a little bit worried about them making to the Super Bowl. So I would do that over them betting them to win the division. It's just not valuable.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Broncos at 22 to 1 feels like, like where you bet them 50 to 1, it feels like buying AMC at like $7 rather than 39 right now. Like I think they're both good investments, but you'd rather have them at 7 so instead of 39. But yeah, I like Denver. I would bet them 22 to 1, and I would bet the Chiefs at like if I can get plus 550. If you can't, I said this before on our Super Bowl odds video. Maybe wait during the season if like the Chiefs lose a game or two. Then you could probably get good value on them somewhere, like maybe even like plus 700. So, I would do that. So let's move on to the NFC West. I think this is the best division in football. First of all, do you agree? And second, which team do you think will take this division?
Yeah, I agree. I think this is the best division in football. You could legitimately make a case for any of these teams to win the division. I would not argue with it. I have all of them finishing with 10 or more wins, which is absurd. And they all could make the playoffs, though by tiebreakers say one of them won't. My tiebreakers are very screwed up in the simulation I did, though, because I was like, this team should not make the playoffs over the Seahawks. But anyway, I think that the team to beat in this division to me is the Rams. I just look at the combination of coaching. You look at the offense. It just looks really good. I know their offensive line isn't great, but they do have continuity, which we've talked about before. So hopefully some of those guys continue to improve, and Andrew Whitworth, stays solid at left tackle. But there's just so many weapons on this team: Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, Van Jefferson, Tyler Higbee. Cam Akers looked really good in the second half of last year. And then you add Matthew Stafford to the fold, and you're talking about a guy who can just really elevate this team, because Jared Goff was not a good starting quarterback. He was below average. And they just had to roll with him because they paid him, and Sean McVay did really well to make him look good after he started his career poorly. That turned out to be a bad deal for them, though they were able to trade him for Matthew Stafford. And I think Stafford's going to really look good. He played well in Detroit with a lot of really mediocre coaches, mediocre blocking. He always had pretty good weapons out there, but he always made the most of them. So I think he really transforms this team into a contender. Defensively, they this team was great last year. They have a lot of cornerback depth, even after losing Troy Hill. Darius Williams was great last year. You have Jalen Ramsey. And then, of course, you have Aaron Donald on the defensive front. So, with them, it's all about tying it together at linebacker. They have a lot of good safeties. So, you hope that the Micah Kaisers of the world can play well. And that should help them solidify things. But I just think this is a really solid team. They have a lot of good pieces, but I think the coaching quarterback combination just really excites me because I think Stafford could really take another step and finally get the recognition he deserves as like a guy who's been a really good quarterback for a really long time. It's just gone unnoticed because of being on Detroit teams that weren't that great.
Yeah, weren't that great. Yeah, they were so bad. They're like, he's never had a coach like Sean McVay. He's never had blocking like the Rams do right now. And yeah, he had Calvin Johnson earlier in his career. Like, so you were saying that he's always had great weapons. So, and Calvin Johnson, obviously one of the best we've seen in recent years. But once Calvin Johnson left, his receiving core has gotten worse. Like I like Marvin Jones a little bit, and I like Kenny Golladay, but Golladay was always kind of banged up, and Marvin Jones, at least last year, he kind of took a step backward a little bit. So even last year, he didn't really have much to throw to, and he will in Los Angeles. So I'm excited to see how Stafford's going to do with the coaching staff and the offensive line. The defense is still great. They lost, like you said, Troy Hill, John Johnson. So they had some departures, plus Brandon Staley, the defense coordinator. Then I thought Wade Phillips' departure last year was going to hurt them, and it didn't. So I'm sure they'll find someone who can coordinate the defense well. Raheem Morris, I think, is pretty good. I don't know. He's not guaranteed to mesh well with what the Rams have, but I think he's going to do well. I would assume. So anyway, I have the Rams winning the division, but it's very close. Like in my previews, I had 3 teams at 12-5, and the Rams would have a better record, like all the other teams, but they have to play each other, and it's kind of a mess. So I love the Rams. Stafford's just so much better than Goff. I was watching the Rams 49ers game recently. It was the Rams got upset by the 49ers, and Jared Goff missed so many throws in that game. It was just so awful. So it's kind of like fresh in my mind. Stafford's not going to miss those throws, and he's going to lead the Rams, I think, deep into the playoffs.
Yeah, and it's funny. We're vibing without, like, I purposely didn't look at the records you had in each of your projections because I wanted to not purposely have the same. But I have 3 teams at 11-6. So like,
nice.
I'm sure we probably have the same 3 there. Maybe not. Could go anyway. But yeah, no, this team just looks really good. I love the Raheem Morris hire. We've seen him do really well in Atlanta. He really helped turn them around after Dan Quinn was fired. Like, it looked like he might get the head coaching job there. And they ultimately went with an offensive guy. But I mean, replacing Brandon Staley with Raheem Morris on paper looks great. We'll see if it works out in practice. But Sean McVay has always seemed to make the right moves with his coaching staff. So I think they're going to be in pretty good shape, I would think.
Yeah, I think so. So if say the Rams have a ton of injuries, which team do you think would win the division then?
That is a really tough call. I have 2 teams tied here. I think I would probably go with the Cardinals as my second choice. It's really close, but I just like the additions that they've made to their defense. They've added veteran talent, J.J. Watt. They got Malcolm Butler to replace Patrick Peterson, who left. And you just look at their offensive line, too. They were the ones who benefited from getting Rodney Hudson. So that's looking better. And Kyler Murray is just a dynamic quarterback. He can make plays. They would have made the playoffs last year if he had been able to stay healthy late in the year. He dealt with what appeared to be a minor hamstring injury or something of that sort. He got banged up against the Patriots as well, I think. Something maybe with his throwing arm. But, if he can stay healthy, this team's going to be really good. They have a lot of weapons. Cliff Kingsbury definitely knows how to coordinate an offense. They should do very well. Chase Edmonds should be good as a lead running back. Maybe James Conner regains his form. I doubt it, but Even if he doesn't, like, he just needs to be a goal line back, if anything, really, besides a backup handcuff in this. So I just think all the weapons that they have, from DeAndre Hopkins to Christian Kirk, they got AJ Green. We don't know if Larry Fitzgerald's coming back yet, but if he does, that's another one. Rondell Moore, they drafted. Andy Isabella, the pride of UMass, is also on this team. So they have a lot of speed. They have a lot of different things they can do with the offense. And, even if Fitzgerald comes back, then you're talking like, all right, you got two old receivers in him and Green. And, are they going to be able to get the job done? But where they have so many other weapons that they should be fine. And Kyler Murray can get the ball to them. And that's what really counts. So I just look at this team and I see explosive playmaking ability from Kyler Murray. So if he stays healthy, this defense should be better. Then I think they got a shot.
Yeah, we'll see about Fitzgerald. I don't think it's going to make or break them, but I'd rather have him on the team because, first of all, his veteran leadership, and second, he's not going to be a first or second receiver anymore. They have Hopkins, they have Kirk, and they have Green now. Like, Fitzgerald as the number 4 receiver, I think it sounds pretty good to me. So I love this Cardinals team. And I was actually, I don't know who posted this on Twitter, but I saw someone ran, like, they had a list of teams that could win the Super Bowl this year. And I saw Dallas Cowboys on there, and I didn't see Arizona Cardinals. I'm like, what? Like, I'm like, I guess this is why it's so easy to make money betting in the NFL if you really know what you're doing. Because, you have bad opinions like that. The Cardinals, to me, are a potential top 5 team in the NFL. They had issues in the offensive line last year. It was better. Their tackles played well, but they had bad interior play at times. But getting Rodney Hudson, I think, is going to be so huge. He's still he's not what he once was, but he's still one of the better centers in the NFL. And then adding JJ Watt on the defensive line to take to kind of replace what they lost in Calais Campbell several years ago. That's massive. And Watt played extremely well last year, and he's going to be very motivated now that he's on a good team without Bill O'Brien. I think he knows that this team could go a long way. Adding Malcolm Butler to replace Patrick Peterson may have sounded bad a couple years ago, but Patrick Peterson was terrible last year. I think he might bounce back, but Butler played well last year. He was better than Peterson, so I think that's going to be an upgrade. Zaven Collins, I love that draft pick, and then you have Isaiah Simmons from last year. You have to think that the Cardinals are going to figure out how to use him in his second year. He's so athletic, so the linebacking core could be really good. And I just love this team. They're one of the 3 teams I have going 12-5 in the division. I have them losing in the second round only because I have them match up against the Buccaneers. If the Buccaneers suffer injuries, like if Brady goes down, obviously they won't be good. But if the Buccaneers, let's just say like Godwin and Evans get hurt, and then several offensive linemen on the Buccaneers get hurt, I can see the Cardinals winning the conference and going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I don't think it's out of the question. They can definitely take a big step forward. They've done a good job of kind of, when Cliff Kingsbury was hired, everyone was kind of like, what's going on? What's this move all about? And we've seen him just be able to open up the offense for Kyler Murray. The next step's getting that defense together. And I agree with you. I think the Zaven Collins pick really filled a need. He'll be a nice fit next to Isaiah Simmons, who started to come on at the end of last year. They kind of know what to do with him now. And JJ Watt, that just completes the front 7, because now you have him, you have Chandler Jones, and you can use Isaiah Simmons in blitz packages as well. So as long as that secondary can hold up and they have some good talent at safety and corner, I think that they're going to be in decent shape. I have them getting eliminated in the first round because they match up with the Rams in my projection. But that could easily flip the other way. Like if they beat the Rams in that game, they could go all the way. I could see it happening.
Yeah, it's a weird dynamic in the NFC West. It seems like the Cardinals just get walloped by the Rams all the time, but yet they do well against Seattle and San Francisco. And it's weird where the Rams can't beat the 49ers, but the 49ers can't beat the Cardinals, or they can't beat the Seahawks sometimes. So it's like a rock, paper, scissors division for some reason. I wonder if Jared Goff getting replaced by Matthew Stafford is going to fix the Rams' problems against the 49ers. We'll see. But yeah, it's I love the Cardinals. I love the Rams, and I love the other 2 teams in the division. So you have 3 teams tied for 11-6. Is the final team 49ers or Seahawks?
It is the 49ers. Is yours the 49ers or Seahawks?
It's 49ers.
Man, we are in sync today, let me tell you.
It's either good or bad because we're sharing a super contest entry. So
yeah, this is either going to be like, oh, we did really well, or oh my god, we were so wrong. This is terrible. But yeah, no, I like the 49ers a lot. I think, they had a ton of injuries last year. Between the quarterback situation, they played Garoppolo a little, but then it was largely CJ Beathard and Nick Mullins to ride out the year. And now they're not going to be in the situation where they need to start either of those guys because they drafted Trey Lance. So, Lance, we'll see if he's ready to start the year. If not, Jimmy Garoppolo is there and he can start. And, Garoppolo hasn't been consistent. He hasn't been able to stay healthy. But he did once start on a team that went to the Super Bowl. So he can at least play steadily enough to keep the 49ers, in the playoff hunt. And then if he starts to falter at any point and Trey Lance is ready, they could throw him into the fire and then they'll be good. But I think if you look at the weapons between Ayuk, Samuel, and George Kittle on offense, they're in good shape. The offensive line's really good. They added Alex Mack, who's, at this stage during the end of his career, but, he can still be a decent center. So I think that'll help out as well because they've had some injury issues at center over the years. Defensively, they have a really good defensive line. They even after getting rid of DeForest Buckner, they have plenty of talent up front. And their secondary is pretty good. Jason Verrett played well last year. He stayed healthy for the first time in like 5 years. So hopefully that can continue. It was nice to see him back on the field and playing well. But this is just, again, this is the type of team that has a lot of talent at every level. You'd be hard-pressed to find a full-out weakness on that defense. And even though they may not look super strong, like maybe you want another cornerback. Maybe you want Richard Sherman to come back because he played well last year. Or he played well when healthy last year. I think he missed a lot of time, actually. But I like this team. I think they can be very good. Kyle Shanahan's a good coach. So, yeah, if their big thing is staying healthy and what happens at quarterback. But this year they have two solid options as opposed to one and then a couple of guys whose names you know. So I'll take Lance and Garoppolo over that situation any day.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, they're going to be so much better than they were last year unless they have the same number of injuries, which is just kind of like a freak situation. It's crazy that, if you think about it, Nick Bosa played just 2 games last year and Dee Ford played 1 game last year. Just having those 2 guys back is going to make the defense so much better. As you mentioned, Richard Sherman missed some time. I think he missed 6 games, I think. But they're still going to have some talent in their secondary. We had Brandon Ayuk missing some action. Deebo Samuel missed some time too. They had some games where they were both out. George Kittle missed a couple of games. I think George Kittle missed the second half of the season, and he missed 2 games in the first half of the season. So they're going to have him back. Plus the quarterback's improving health wise. The secondary was just a train wreck of injuries last year. Like I think they were down to like their 4th or 5th safeties at times. They were down to the 4th or 5th of cornerbacks, and that's how they found Jason Verrett. So that's kind of a bonus. So just having this team healthy is going to be such a huge boon to this team. And the one concern you could say is quarterback, but it's going to be so much better than it was last year. Still, though, I mean, having Garoppolo under center is not ideal. And if Trey Lance wins the job, he's going to be a rookie. And I don't trust a rookie quarterback to win the Super Bowl. Like, it just doesn't happen. So if the 49ers had like Lance entering his second year, I would make a strong case for them to win the Super Bowl. But I still think they're going to make the playoffs. Obviously, I have them going 12-5. I think I have them going to the NFC Championship just based on matchups. But either way, like I feel like worst case scenario, unless there are a ton of injuries, I think they go at least 10-7 and make the playoffs. So I really like them this year.
Yeah, I do too. I could easily see them making the Super Bowl. Winning it, depending on who it would depend a lot on who their matchup is. I mean, they almost beat the Chiefs that one time, but then Garoppolo didn't play well enough in the 4th quarter. So, any bet on the 49ers to win either is betting on Trey Lance to be like some wunderkind, like that comes in right away. That's just like, oh my God, he's like on Mahomes' level almost, or like looks like a young Patrick Mahomes, or you're betting on Jimmy Garoppolo to come in and finally, just play consistently and steadily and make more plays than he has made in his career. So, not the most appealing thing, but betting them to make the playoffs or possibly win this division, I would have no problem with that.
Yeah, definitely. If Garoppolo was just mediocre in that Super Bowl in the fourth quarter, they would have won it. He just couldn't get a first down like when he needed to, and he was terrible in that fourth quarter. You have to think that Trey Lance is going to be at least better than Garoppolo was in that quarter, or maybe Garoppolo at least can equal what he did in that year, and then that means the Niners can get into the Super Bowl. So I think second or third round in the playoffs is probably most likely, but yeah, they could definitely get to the Super Bowl. So we have the Seahawks left in this division. You have them a notch below, as do I. So I'm curious to hear why you think that is.
Yeah, I like the Seahawks, and I think Pete Carroll's done a nice job with them over the years, but I just feel like this team has too many holes on the defensive side of the ball to compete in this division. I think if they're in a weaker division, we're talking about them as, maybe they could win the division, maybe they could be a wild card team, but they just don't stack up as well on either side of the ball with their opponents. I think their offensive line looks as good as it's looked in a very long time. They got Gabe Jackson from the Raiders, so the second NFC West team to benefit from the Raiders' silly idea of blowing up their offensive line. And then, they got Dwayne Eskridge in the draft to be their third receiver. So that filled one of their biggest needs up there. Tight end is the only real question mark on offense, in my opinion. Offensive line, you could maybe make a case at certain positions, but I think as a whole, the unit's fine. Tight end, it's just take your pick of which of these 17 guys that they've had over the last 2 years is going to step up. I like Will Dissly still, but he's been injured a lot. They signed Gerald Everett, so we'll see what happens there. But, as long as Russell Wilson is healthy, that offense has a chance to win. The bigger issues on the defensive side of the ball. They don't have any standout pass rushers. I think that they're going to find a way to be productive with the guys that they've got. I know they signed Kerry Hyder, who had a good year last year, and they drafted Darrell Taylor in the second round. He didn't even play last year, so maybe he's better than we were expecting. But, I'm still worried about not having a true big-time pass rusher up front, losing Jaron Reed, losing KJ Wright, who remains unsigned. Maybe they sign him later in the year, but he's been massively important to them, especially in coverage. And the secondary, it's the same thing. They have Jamal Adams, who's a standout safety. He had his issues last year coming over from the Jets. He was a little banged up, though, so he should be fine. But do they have a true number one cornerback? I'm not entirely sure that they do, so that could prove to be a problem for them. They just have enough questions on defense that to give me pause and make me say, when they get into the division games, it could be a slog for them. So, I don't think they're going to do badly. I have them at 10-7. I have them fighting for a wild card spot. They could make the playoffs, but I don't think they're going to make a run this year because we saw Russell Wilson play really, really well last year. Some of his best football ever. And the Seahawks barely made noise in the playoffs at all. So I think it's going to be tough for them to get there again until they make some upgrades to their defense.
Yeah, huge disappointment last year in the playoffs, losing to the Rams at home. And I know the Rams have the Seahawks number, but remember Jared Goff was injured in that game, and yet the Rams still beat the Seahawks, which is a real surprise. I feel like the general consensus is that the Seahawks still have a bad offensive line. I don't think that's true. They still have Dwayne Brown, who's still a good left tackle. Damian Lewis was solid last year as a rookie, and you think he's going to be better with experience. And then they signed Gabe Jackson, which you mentioned. So I actually like their offensive line. The defensive line is a bigger concern, much bigger. I mean, I don't know how they can generate pressure on the quarterback. Yeah, Kerry Hyder's there. I don't really trust them to be a top pass rusher. I think he's okay. I think he's a good rotational guy, but I don't like him to have a major role. I don't like their run defense at all. And then their secondary, which you touched on, they lost their top two corners from last year. They got Akella Weatherspoon-Pierre this year. I'm just not a big fan of either of those guys. They're not terrible, but I don't think they're that good either. So, if those two guys had, a better pass rush in front of them, I could see, you could get away with those two. But given that the Seahawks don't have a good pass rush, I feel like those two are going to get torched. especially in their division with all the talented, players on offense with the three other teams. So, the Seahawks are, I don't think they're going to be bad this year. I have them going 11-6, I believe. So I still have them making the playoffs. I'm never going to doubt Russell Wilson. He's a top 3 or maybe top 4 NFL quarterback right now. He's going to carry the Seahawks to at least, the precipice of the playoffs. Like I don't see them going worse than 9-8 or anything unless he gets hurt. But the problem is that just this defense is so bad. He's going to have to outscore the other team by, he's going to have to score into the 40s in most of his games. And it's just going to be tough for him to do that every week.
Yeah, absolutely. And like maybe this team could end up having a Chiefs-like defense where it's like, oh, these guys don't have any names, but like this is turning out to be pretty good. But I still feel like they lack the star power because, you have Bobby Wagner and Jamal Adams, and that's pretty much it in terms of like star power on defense. Everyone else, you're kind of like, this guy seems like a dart throw, or like, hey, this guy's a good rotational player. Like, they're going to have to mix and match a ton, especially up front. Like when they had Jaron Reed, it was one thing because, he could play all 3 downs. He could generate some pass rush pressure and was decent against the run. But now you're talking about like on the interior line, you got Poona Ford, Al Woods, Rasheem Green. They got Robert Nkemdiche too. I forgot about that. So, they have pieces, but they're missing like the top guys. Like they have a lot of good guys that I consider good depth, but they don't have enough of those top guys. And I think that's going to show. And that we saw them last year. They had a similar situation on the defensive line, traded for Carlos Dunlap, and that made an impact for them. But they still needed more to get over the hump, and they didn't do enough, I think, to add more.
Yeah, definitely not. So the odds to win the NFC West, Cardinals are plus 585. Rams plus 181, 49ers plus 196, Seahawks plus 250. I think there is an obvious bet here. I assume you're going to say the Cardinals like I am.
Yeah, it's ridiculous that they're that much lower than the other teams in the division. Like I can't fathom why that would be. Like these are all pretty evenly matched. Like if they all had like very close to the same or similar odds, I would be like, yeah, that makes sense to me. So having the Cardinals at a better than 5-1 odds, I'll take that all day, every day. I might pair it with the Rams too, just to like hedge my own bet a little bit, because I think the Rams odds are pretty solid there because I think they have a good chance of winning the division. So I probably would bet those two. Give myself, hypothetically a 50% chance to win the division, but I would think it would be better than that. So the Cardinals are the best bet though, because the pricing on that's just crazy.
Yeah, I agree. It's a great value bet. If I were to handicap this, if I were like placing the odds and I was not factoring in public perception, I think every team would be like plus 100. Like maybe the Seahawks would be like plus 130, and it would be that close. I feel like you can, not flip a coin. Obviously, there are 4 teams, but you basically flip a 4-sided coin and kind of come up with the division winner. I think the Seahawks maybe, like we said, a step below these teams, but like you're saying, I mean, they have some young players that we haven't really seen all that much. If one of them or 2 of them step up and play at close to a Pro Bowl level, which is possible, they can easily win the division. So I'd like the Cardinals a lot at plus 585. That number should be like plus 180, as close to the Rams and the Niners.
Yeah, I think the lowest any team in this division should be is like the Seahawks. I could see a scenario where you'd be like, all right, let's make them like plus 220 or something. And then every other team is lower than, like, has better odds than them. Or even if you wanted to say like, hey, we're going to make the Cardinals the worst team, I don't think they should be like anything worse than 220. So, they should all be bunched closer together than they are. I agree with you. This is really like a 4-sided coin flip, or I guess a better way to do that would be flip 2 coins and set each outcome heads, tails, tails, heads, tails. This is very nerdy. I'm being very nerdy right now.
That makes more sense. And I should say that they probably shouldn't be all plus or plus 100. I think you probably like the Rams should be like minus 110, Niners plus 100, Cardinals plus 100, and then Seahawks, like you said, like maybe closer to plus 200, but I think like plus 180 or something like that. the odds to win the Super Bowl: Cardinals 40-1. Seahawks are 17.5-1. That's very crazy. The Rams are 9.8-1, and the 49ers are 15-1. So does anything stand out there? Obviously the Cardinals 40-1.
Yeah, Cardinals 40-1. I'd put something on that. They could make a run. Why not at 40-1? Take a shot, because all you need is them to make the playoffs, and then they could go on a tear. So I like that. I think I've already bet on the Rams. I think I got them at like 12-1, maybe. I still like them at 9.8-1 because I think they're the best team in that division. I think this is a classic situation of, I think once they get out of that division and are playing competition outside this division, it might be easier for them somewhat, because they're going to be like, wow, we had these 6 tough divisional games, and now I get to play the Vikings in the playoffs, or some team like the Vikings. I don't mean to hate on the Vikings here. You're in the playoffs in this scenario. That's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a compliment. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a backhanded compliment, I guess. But yeah, so I like the Rams, and I like the Cardinals. I thought about earlier in the offseason in previous videos, I thought about the 49ers, but I don't think I would quite go there, because we talked about the quarterback issues. If the value is better, if we were talking like at 20-1, then I'd probably be like, yeah, I'll give that a shot, because maybe Garoppolo could do it. But
you froze a little bit at the end there. But what you're saying before makes sense. Like the 49ers, if they're in the 20s, like maybe 25-1, I would definitely bet that. 20-1, I'd probably think about it. The Rams, 9.8-1, there's no value there. So like if the Rams, like with the Chiefs, if they lose a couple of games during the regular season, you might get like 12 or 15-1 at some point, which I would take. Cardinals are, I think, the best value on the board in any division at 40-1. Outside of it, unless you think there's a great chance Rodgers goes to Denver, which I think is a good chance. But if you think that it's almost automatic, Denver's the best value. But outside of that, I think Arizona 40-1. I already bet them at 40-1. I may bet more at 40-1. I'm going to Las Vegas in a week and a half. And so I'm going to be looking at the best odds in the sports books they have out there. So I'm hoping that someone has them at 50-1 or something like that, or maybe even higher. Who knows? The odds are so different. If you go to Vegas, I remember the year the Eagles won the Super Bowl, the year the Eagles won the Super Bowl. They were 40-1 in some sports books. They were 20-1 in other sports books. So you can really shop around and get good deals, especially if you're in Vegas, because then you would have access to those sports books plus the online ones. So definitely that's what I would say. Don't bet on one sports book. Like, you want to shop around. Like if you're looking to buy a car, you don't go to just one dealership. You try to shop around. So that's my suggestion there.
Yeah, I wish you hadn't brought up the Eagles thing, because I that year did not bet on someone to win the Super Bowl. I bet this was the worst thing. I bet Doug Peterson to win Coach of the Year. He finished second to McVay. Then the Eagles, I had predicted they would beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl. I had the same prediction as you, and they ended up winning. So I ended up double losing because I hadn't bet the Eagles to win, and they beat the Patriots. So it was like, it's just this avalanche of, and then Doug Peterson's in second place. What a disaster that was. But that was a good game, so I can't complain. And, years later, we got the Buccaneers at 50-1, so I'm okay.
yeah, that made up for it for sure. But yeah, it's definitely what could have been, I guess. What could have been. All right. So yeah, I guess that's it. We're going to talk about the AFC and NFC South next time. Do you have anything to plug?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Kamenker. I've been doing a lot of betting content over at Sporting News. We're actually on a hot streak right now. I've had the Euro winner in my preview for the Euro Cup. I had the winner for the U.S. Open, which granted was the favorite in my U.S. Open preview. And I had the winner of the Home Run Derby among my 2 picks for that event. So yeah, we're trying to stay hot with the British Open this week and hopefully make some more money that I can spend during football season. I'll be sure to tweet my British Open betting preview tomorrow, so you guys can all check that out. And check out sportingnews.com for all your sports news. And just follow me on Twitter, and we'll keep talking football. It's almost here. Yeah,
for sure. Sounds good. I'll be leading on your golf picks for my golf DraftKings entry. And I saw that you had Italy. It's funny because I was at my parents' house on Sunday, and my dad was like, "Are you going to watch England, Italy?" I'm like, "In what? Like volleyball. Like I had no idea what was going on, but then I saw your tweet and I was like, oh, okay, that makes more sense. So that's good call on your part. I had no idea. I couldn't name a single player. So you could go to walterfootball.com for tons of content. We Charlie updated his 2021 NFL mock drafts, season previews for every team, fantasy rankings, cheat sheets, sleepers. I'm going to be updating my 2022 NFL mock draft tonight / tomorrow morning. So check that out for 2 rounds. And then once again, please hit like, subscribe, share this video, comment below. All that would help us out. Like I said, we're almost at 2,500 subscribers. So that's pretty awesome. So anyway, I will talk to you next time.
All right. Sounds good. Talk to you then.
All right. Bye.